Folks, welcome to another episode of the Preparedness Podcast, the podcast that brings you the best in preparedness information. My name is Rob Hannes. I'm the host for the show. You can like us on Facebook at Preparedness Podcast, follow us on Twitter at PrepCast, or you can just go to the website at thepreparednesspodcast.com and check out all the information we got going there. You can also reach me directly at rob@prepcast.info. Just coming back from the Prepare to Endure Prepper Expo in Bakersfield, California. Had a great time. It was a lot of fun. Saw a lot of vendors there that I see kind of nationally. Saw a lot of listeners. That was kind of surprising. I wasn't really expecting so many. I knew there were a few, but I had not really expected to see so many. Some of you traveled a long way to get there, and I appreciate that very much. It was a lot of fun, and I want to thank Brian and Darren for inviting me out there. If you haven't had the opportunity to go to a Prepper Expo for one reason or another, you really should. There's a lot of neat stuff that you're going to find there. There's a lot of new products that come out all the time. Technology improves. For example, the solar panels are getting smaller. The LED flashlights are getting brighter. There's just more technology that goes out there, as well as the old standbys. I mean, good old first aid kits and stuff like that. But you can see all the stuff that's out there. It's a good chance to look at the vendors and see what they have. It's a good chance, or a good opportunity to see who are the local vendors. I know when I go to the Prepper Expos near me, when I first started going, I didn't know there were so many prepper-related vendors in my area. So that was always good to see. And it's always a good chance to kind of meet new people, especially if you go to the same class, because a lot of these expos, one of the big draw is that they have educational classes on a wide variety of topics. And, you just start talking to somebody, and it's a good way to meet people of like mind. Now, I don't think I saw any at Bakersfield, but at the Prepper Fest AZ here in Scottsdale a few months ago, there were at least two prepper meetup groups that had booths at the one in Scottsdale. And it was a good opportunity for you to talk to the organizers without even having to really, introduce yourself or your name or tip who you are if you wanted to keep your operational security at the highest level. And just kind of check them out and stuff. But, what I noticed is there are a lot of preppers out there. And I think there are more every year because, things aren't improving. It's not the 1950s. It's the second decade of the 21st century. And the economy stinks. It's not really getting better. More and more people are on government assistance, food stamps and stuff like that. There's a lot of jobs that have gone away that aren't going to come back. And the jobs that are here are, either you had one or you may be now working a lower wage job. And that's a lot of what has been replaced are these lower wage jobs. So a lot of people have woken up to the concept of preparedness. And I think that's what's driving a lot of these shows. There's a lot of people who are looking for information. So if you get the opportunity to go to these, I really think you should. Check out Typically, you can check out the website, find out what kind of classes they have, who's speaking, when they're speaking, what the topics are. So that way you can kind of plan your day of knowing when to get there, how long you might be there, and when to head to the class when you're at the expo itself. One of the interesting things that was there is that National Geographic's Doomsday Preppers was there. From what I understand, they are starting a new series. And I don't think it's going to be on TV. I think it's just an internet-based series about prepper expos, which isn't really too surprising because there are a lot of prepper expos. There were two around me this past year so far. There were two or three in the last half of 2012, in my area, within, say, maybe 45-mile driving distance. There are at least two more coming up in this area. Now, I don't know if Arizona is different than other areas, but there just seems to be a lot of prepper expos going on. But I know there are others that are also, going on in the rest of the part of the country. And they're probably looking at this thinking this is another aspect that they can show on their Doomsday Preppers. So anyways, they had this expert roundtable that I was a part of, and I decided to do it, one, because I think it was only going to be a webisode and not on TV. The other, but I'm trying to, expand the reach of the podcast. I think we got some great information that I'd like to get to people, and it's really difficult to sometimes do that if, you're not doing marketing and self-promoting and stuff. So I sat in on this, and it was going pretty well. And I'm thinking, okay, I think I'm going to get out of here without actually being portrayed in too bad of a light. And then the guy next to me, and I don't know his name, I've never seen him before, but he starts ranting and raving about the apocalypse and Armageddon, and this is what he's preparing for, and you people don't understand. I know secrets that you don't know, and I gotta be prepared. And I was just like, I was stupefied, because it was kind of interesting that somebody believed that so much, because I don't believe in the Armageddon scenario. Not to say that we can't have an apocalyptic scenario. I mean, if we had pandemic flu that decimated 50% of the population, sure, that would be bad. An EMP situation would be bad. But there are not too many likely scenarios that are going to lead to a Mad Max scenario. And that's what this guy was. He didn't say Mad Max, but the way he was talking, what he's referring to is, this is what he was preparing for, a Mad Max situation. And I don't really believe in the Mad Max situation. And history doesn't bear that out. For example, he was using the fall of the Roman Empire as the example of why we should be prepared. Now, to be sure, the Roman Empire did collapse, but it took over 1,000 years for it to collapse. It wasn't something that happened overnight or even within a year. It took a very long time. And to me, in my opinion, this is not something we're likely to see. The Mad Max scenario is not the likely scenario. Sure, again, yeah, I suppose it's plausible, but it's not very likely. And one of the reasons is if you look through history, if you look at the aspect of how humans behave and how humans are community based. We need each other. We need a community. That's why we have cities. It's like the cities, early cities are built by water because we need water. Well, cities also form because people need people. We need to share skills. We need to be together because we like to talk to each other. We like to get along with each other, do stuff with each other, but we also need to be with each other in order to live. That's the problem with the Mad Max scenario, is it completely ignores the fact that people don't want to live that way and will do whatever they can in order to get back to normalcy. And after living in a high-tech society like we do, whatever happens, we are going to be struggling like heck to be able to go back to this sense of normalcy. Beyond that, most disasters don't even approach that. So I think it's completely weird that somebody is looking at this as the primary concern when the truth of it doesn't really bear out why you should be doing that. And so he's ranting and raving, and I'm trying to figure out what I can say to basically stop this guy from continuing to rant, because he just kept ranting and on. Well, luckily, Nurse Amy and Dr. Bones were there. I met them for the first time, and I thought they were, good people. And she took up the charge and basically took on his rant, and I thought she did a really good job with that. So, not really sure when it's going to be available, but I'm sure it'll be done in the typical Doomsday Prepper scenario, because I know they'll latch on this, because they always do. They like those ranters and ravers. So we'll see how it goes. While I was there, I gave a couple classes on EMP. That went really well. A lot of people interested and excited about that, and had a lot of people stop by, and we talked for a long time about it at the table. And my voice was really shot, which is why I didn't really do a podcast yesterday, because I was letting my voice rest, because it wasn't hoarse, but you could tell I used it a lot this weekend. And so that's why we are starting the week on Tuesday this week. I also want to remind you to check out the Kickstarter for the EMP Shield project. Mike and Robin have built, with the help of EMP designers, 3 prototypes for an EMP Faraday cage. The next step is to get it tested and then put it into production. They're going to have it tested at the largest EMP simulator in the country outside of the military. Like I said, they had the help of EMP designers, so it's built well. It's built and designed to withstand EMP. Mike told me that their plan is to have it tested until failure, so they know exactly how much EMP this thing will shield. I think this is a great project that preppers should back. I think we should support this because it's preppers helping preppers, and there is no other way other than a do-it-yourself solution that we can get EMP shielding. And so the final product isn't going to be that expensive, under $150 from what I understand. Depends on final production costs, but if you back the project, $99 or more, one of the rewards is getting a EMP shield container. And so I think it's a great thing to check out, and you can go to Kickstarter.com and search for EMP shield, and you'll find it there. So go ahead and check that out. Another thing I like to mention is that the Preparedness Capability Checklist book is available. You can go to the website, click on the book cover. It'll take you to the page which will talk about the book, a little description and about what it is and stuff, and then you can click through to the book patch store. Some people have been telling me they've had issues with their browsers being able to complete the order online, something about the security certificate. I talked to the book patch and they looked into it and they said it should be fine. So if you had issues, go ahead and go back. If you continue to have issues, please email me at rob@prepcast.info. Let me know what you're trying to do. Let me know what issues you had, as well as what kind of browser and what version you're using, because that'll help them troubleshoot what's going on and get it fixed. And for those of you that may be new to the podcast, the Preparedness Capability Checklist is the most recent book I just published. It is unlike anything you probably have seen as far as preparedness lists or survival lists. Most of these things deal with gear and equipment. They will tell you, have 300 pounds of wheat, have a butane lighter, have a water filter. In other words, it's basically an inventory list or an inventory wish list. Now, when I first started, and I think I related this story before, I made tons of lists of all my gear. And I loved seeing the list because I could see everything I had and where it was, and it was great. However, what happened is when I would say or come across a threat or a disaster, I'd be like, oh, am I prepared for this? I'd look at the list and I couldn't tell. And that's because inventory lists do not contain the information as to whether or not you're prepared. That's where the Preparedness Capability Checklist exceeds. It's based on capabilities. It will list out for you which capabilities you should be prepared to do, what you need to accomplish in a survival situation or a survival scenario. It's up to you how you want to accomplish them. But if you can accomplish them for that level, for that category, then you've got a much better idea of whether or not you're going to be prepared. And that's what the book is all about. I had received the first order of books just before I went, took them down to the Prepper Expo, had them on the table. People were looking at them, explaining what it was. They flipped through them, and I nearly sold out of them. That's when people see what information is in there and what's contained in there, they're really excited because it is unlike anything else that's on the prepper scene right now as far as helping you get prepared. So when you get a chance, go to the website and check it out. For the rest of the podcast, we're going to be talking with Tom from Camping Survival. First time we talked to him, kind of learned a little bit about him and his business. This time, we're going to be talking about edible plants and some other survival skills. Tom is an avid outdoorsman, and I invited him to come back and talk about some of these skills. And so that's what we did. Now, if you haven't been to the Camping Survival site, go ahead and check it out, campingsurvival.com. As I've mentioned, I like the site. I like it when sites have a lot of different stuff that I can go through. If I'm looking at packs or water filters or whatever it is, I like to have a variety. I like to have options, and I don't want to have to pay too much for it. And that's what the campingsurvival.com website is all about. But the added bonus of that is I get to tap into Tom's wealth of knowledge on outdoor survival skills. He is out all the time, not only doing stuff for him, but he's constantly talking to people. So he's continually picking up tips and tricks and stuff. And so that's one of the things we're going to be talking about. And we're going to be talking about edible plants and other survival skills. And here's the interview. Tom, welcome back to the podcast. I appreciate you spending some time with us. Folks, Tom is the owner of campingsurvival.com. They got a lot of great items on there. It's one of those stores that you can go to that just you get lost in because you're like, oh, that's kind of cool, and I didn't know they made that. And you just keep going down the rabbit hole of all these great items that would fill your solutions for your preparedness plan and trying to how you're going to start fire and how you're going to get water for your bug out bags and stuff like that. So it's a great site. Go ahead and take a look at it. Tom, again, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited again to be on here. It's my second time, and I loved your comment there, going down the rabbit hole. It's funny. I started visualizing that through my website. It's a fun website. We've got some cool stuff on it. And again, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, that's what, honestly, when we were looking at potential advertisers, I came across your site, and I told my wife, I said, oh, contact these people because I love how you have the variety of the site.
I don't carry things I don't like or don't want or junk or anything like that. It's everything I added over the years is stuff that I either want or already have in my preps. You know, it's right. Kind of how it's out there.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I want to have you back on is because you're not just sitting in an office managing your business. You're out there doing stuff. And in the pre-show, we were just talking about the book 1 Second After and how you had just finished it for what, the third or fourth time?
Yeah, something like that. It's either 3 or 4 times I've read it.
Yeah, and I've read it a couple times, and then I went out and bought the audiobook. And because I really like audiobooks because they allow me to like read a book, quote unquote, without actually having to look at the page. So I can like be driving or at work or something like that. And they're really great. But another aspect that I found to audiobooks was that because somebody else is reading it, you can't skim over parts. So if you get into a boring conversation, I tend to skip. Or if it's an action scene, I tend to read it faster. And I miss things. So by having somebody else read it to me, I pick up more stuff because that's just, how I read some things. And so we were talking, or you were just telling me about how you were struck by the sawdust in the food.
Yeah. It keeps sticking into my head, and I don't know if it necessarily popped into my head today because of our interview or if it just popped up, but one point in the book they were talking about running out of food, and I believe it was the winter, and so the town management decided to add sawdust to their food, and I'm thinking, jeepers. I study edible and medicinal plants extensively, and we can get into that in a little bit. Starvation doesn't necessarily have to occur if you really study what's around you, but I was thinking, jeepers, if like the inner bark of white pine, for example, one of my favorite trees to quote eat, you can eat the inner bark. I'm thinking if some trees are edible, why isn't the sawdust nutritional? So they're throwing sawdust into this food, and but then I started doing a little studying, and I learned that like the inner bark is like the circulatory system of the tree. So you've got the outer bark, which is not edible, and then you've got the inner bark, and then the rest of the tree inside. And of course, needles are edible, or you can make teas on that type of thing. But the reason the sawdust is nutritional, I learned, because other than this, the circulatory system, the inner bark, the rest of the tree is essentially dead. So that's why sawdust is nutrition. But then I was also thinking, well, shoot, we people eat McDonald's and all the other crap that's out there. Maybe sawdust is still even better for you than that,
Yeah, may not be much of a difference there.
Yeah, exactly. But and that's so then I started thinking about starvation, and I think, and again, you never know until you're tested, and I hope I never am, but I think I have the knowledge and experience to not starve or let my family starve because I study edible and medicinal plants, and I look out my window here in the office, or every time I'm in the woods, I try and eat something, and a couple reasons. One, I like to I think it's good for your body to put different things into it that are good for you and healthy. So, even in my yard, as long as it's away from the road and any other chemical pollutants, I'll grab a leaf or some wood sorrel from the ground. I like to put these types of foods into my system, but so when I go into the woods, I'm looking around and see jeepers, or near a swamp. People really don't have to starve. After some kind of an event like these books or these other stories or even real life, people hunt out the area. For example, let's go to the mountains. We'll live forever. But it gets hunted out. The animals, over killing of the animals, they're not going to be able to keep up with you. So then meat's going to run out. But then you look around the woods, it would be really hard for a population to eat everything in the woods that's edible and then still starve. And that's what these people seem to be missing oftentimes in these books where their starvation is they don't know what's edible out there. And it can be, walking around trampling over all kinds of edible stuff while they're chasing game. So I think that's extremely important. I would recommend everybody really kind of learn what's around them that's edible.
Yeah, well, I think that is a great example of how you're maintaining your survival skills, your preparedness skills by, like you said, you're trying to eat something different, which I agree with you is important. If you eat nothing but processed food, you're going to have some intestinal issues. If you try something that's a little more raw or a little more organic, right off the stem, so to speak, or even just a different type of plant type, if you're not used to it, then again, you can get used to it, and I think doing like what you did is important. But, I agree that there's so much out there. I mean, even worms and grubs and ants and termites and bugs like that are edible, and I don't recall any of that in the book. And there are a few stories where they go to that, but a lot of them don't. I seem to recall that the Indians had, or organic tribes from long ago would make some sort of paste or a meal out of insects of some sort. I know that the people who live in the jungle, they have bugs in their diet a lot. I mean, that's a high source of protein. I think a lot of us would not think about eating that. I know I wouldn't want to eat a bug right now, but I have part of the survival training in the Marine Corps and stuff. We've eaten several things just for them to show us that, look, you can eat them and it's not going to hurt you. I just would rather not. But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff out there. What do you recommend for people to getting used to this? Where can they go to look for information? Do you have a good book that you reference or something like that, so that when they walk out into the woods, they can start looking at, instead of just seeing trees, how can they start looking at food sources?
It's a good question. Actually, I'm kind of chuckling a little bit. I forgot you were a former Marine, as I am, and I was about to try and remember how long I've been studying edible and medicinal plants, and it's probably been, 10 years, but I'm 46, so I was a Marine a long time ago, and we did study that type of stuff back then, but it's interesting. I kind of stopped after the Corps and then got into it again on my own, and the way I got into it, I'm going to guess about 10 years ago, was my first edible plant walk was at a local nature center, Beaver Lake Nature Center. I was just flipping through the local town newspaper, and I saw a notification in the back that this woman, Nancy, was doing an edible plant walk. And I was a bit into survival and preparedness, but I hadn't started studying medicinal plants, and I just said, the heck with it. I'm going to go, and there was only like 2 or 3 people there, and this woman walked us around the woods, and I was amazed at, because generally one looks at the woods and just sees the woods, but she actually knew what was around there at her feet and above her, and she would actually pick things up and eat them and let us eat them and taste them. And that kind of blew my mind. It's like, wow, there's real food. It's just growing all around us, And so then I started going on more plant walks with her, and then pretty quickly I noticed that on this plant walk she carried a Peterson's Guide to Edible Plants, and I'm thinking, well, that's interesting. This woman, she's older than me, and she's been studying this stuff forever, and she's obviously an expert. And why does she carry a plant book? I'm thinking, almost for a moment I lost confidence in her. I was thinking, and then, you can't know everything, and you got to remember what you're doing here. You're eating wild, edible, and medicinal plants, and even the experts, and in fact, she is also a mycologist, I believe is the term, where she studies mushrooms. And every year, one or two mushroomers around the country actually die because they misidentify something or they get really sick. So it's as we talk about all this stuff, and it's pretty casual. And when I take people in the woods, especially children, I ask the parents first: are you sure you want to do this? Know your child, know whether he or she is going to be responsible, and et cetera. Or even adults, you have to say, just because I showed you this, this little clover, or it's wood sorrel, doesn't mean that everything that looks like that is edible, and you could get poisoned, like wild carrot even. That stuff, it's really good. It's really a great wild edible, but there's a really dangerous poisonous lookalike. And so I think that's important to study with an expert. Find someone locally. Check out your local, if there's a school of environmental forestry or the like, contact them, or a 4-H. Those organizations often have some good people.
I'm just thinking about all the places I've seen. We have an arboretum, and then we have another sort of plant reserve here, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but they will have classes or walks, like you said, that basically point out this stuff. They're not typically well advertised, so you need to look for them. Like we have an REI here, and I've seen a lot of the advertisements for that stuff at REI. Probably if you get online and start searching, I think all these places have websites too that will kind of give you what their class schedule is or when the next walk is. And I think that's probably a good way to learn. I know even here in the desert, we have, actually, I think it's surprising that how much food we actually have to eat in the typical desert. You would think, oh, it's barren, it's got cactus and stuff, but actually a lot of that stuff is edible. Now, it may not taste great, like a lot of raw plants don't, but it's there. You can, and not only can you get food, but you can get water a lot out of these cactus. But you need to kind of know how to do it. I was camping last year, a little over a year ago, with a group, and one of the things we did is we cut off some prickly pear, a couple pads of prickly pear, and one guy sliced it up, and we all had a bit. And actually, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it's not something I think I would want every day, like a part of a meal in everyday life, but it kind of reminded me of a bitter kiwi strawberry sort of taste and texture, which really wasn't all that bad. I mean, I could see adding this to, if I was hungry, that would have been like candy, quite honestly.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a good step right there, is to find out the conservation areas that are giving these classes. And I agree that, even though you may have been doing it for years and years, plants are tricky. I have a couple edible plant books, and I remember going out and trying to find these things, and the picture, they usually only show one picture at a certain time of the year. It's very difficult to identify that plant as being what you're looking at in the picture, and so it takes skills, it takes practice, it takes ideally somebody who knows what they're talking about showing you, yes, this is what it looks like in the spring, or this is what it looks like in the fall, and that way you can kind of get to learn it.
Actually, what just popped in my head? Something interesting. It's kind of exciting. This is for me. I don't know if anybody else will find this exciting or not. But on the back of our building here, we have some poison ivy growing, and others should get to the ball. You have to get that down. The reason I like having it there, actually, and I try and convey this to other people as well, I watch this poison ivy throughout the year, all year long. I just take a break from my office. I go outside and walk around a little bit. And I go behind the building and say, okay, there's the poison ivy. What's it look like today? Various seasons, depending on the light, depending on the moisture, if there's been rain. I do this with all plants, but it's nice to have a reference. And poison ivy, for example, changes massively. And you can look at a patch of poison ivy, and you'll show someone who doesn't know it, and you say, boy, that plant is poison ivy, that plant is poison ivy, that leaf is poison ivy, and even that one. But this one over here is not. And it blows people's mind that I can do that. But it's really just in part because of this stupid little plant behind the building. I pay attention to to it. And that's one of the ways I learn plants as well too. Is if you have these plants in your yard, whether edible or medicinal or poisonous, watch them, pay attention to them, and kind of make it a little one of your challenges in life. Just to educate yourself and watch this thing year round.
Sure, and I think probably an important aspect that I'd like to convey to people is don't try to learn everything. Let's say you go out and buy an edible wild plant book for your area. It's got, hundreds of plants in there. Don't try to learn all of them. Try to identify some of the more common ones, plantain, dandelion, thistle, whatever is out there, and learn how to identify those plants and how to use those plants, whether they're edible or medicinal, whatever. And once you're comfortable with those, then, add one or two a year. Because I think a lot like preparedness in general, when people try to do too much, it becomes overwhelming. And then, they're like, oh, this isn't going to work, and they stop.
Mm-hmm. That is absolutely terrific advice. I'm glad you said that. I love it because I do the same thing. I learn new plants every year. I kind of not exactly set myself a goal, but I'd really like to learn, for example, 5 to 10 new plants this year. And I find that if I go on an edible plant class, my friend Marty Simon of the Wilderness Learning Center, the guy's amazing. He knows every plant out there. But I try and go to his class and spend a week with him. And by the end of the week, or even pretty clearly in the beginning of the week, it's overwhelming. I can't remember that one. I can't remember. So I pick a certain number, that I want to retain at the end of this class, and those are the ones I focus on in my travels, in the woods or even around town. In fact, the other side of our building, we have St. John's wort. It's a good plant. You've probably heard of the tea. It's a kind of a sedative, but we have the plant growing right outside our warehouse here, so I watch that year round as well too. But again, you can't overwhelm yourself. You got to take it easy and be good to yourself and be easy on yourself, and you will learn.
Yeah, and that's the important aspect is don't overwhelm yourself, especially if you're a new prepper or if you're, even a experienced or seasoned prepper. If you're still trying to work on your preparedness plan, if you're let's say you were single and now you're married and have kids and you're trying to expand your plan and now you're like, oh yeah, I really should learn plants too. Again, don't overwhelm yourself. Start small. I was teaching or trying to teach my kids the other day. I was trying to tell them, we were talking about dandelions, and my son wanted to know why the dandelion goes from. Actually, the question he asked was, what's the plant that looks like a dandelion, but it's got the white fuzzy on top? And I was telling him that's a dandelion, and he was really kind of interested in it. So I pulled up some pictures, and I was showing him how it progresses. We actually found this time-lapse video of a dandelion going from bloom to need. It was pretty cool. It was like in a matter of 2 minutes, this whole lifespan of the dandelion. It was very cool. But I was also telling him, I took this opportunity to tell him that, you can eat dandelion leaves. They're edible. And he was like, really? I'm like, not that they don't eat salad, so it's not like he would be excited to go eat it or anything, but just kind of putting that seed in his head that, hey, dandelions you can eat the leaves, and not that we're going to go make a salad of them, but I try to do it with my kids, just kind of put little blurbs into their head that will kind of, hopefully they'll remember at some point and spark an interest later. But yeah, I think learning a couple at a time, going out and finding out what is edible. Like I know there's a woman out here. She was part of one of the prepper meetup groups. She made these muffins from mesquite, the mesquite beans. She would pound them and stuff. And they're not really not what I would call like a blueberry muffin type of taste, but the fact that you can actually. I mean, she made the flour from the mesquite bean, ground it up, dried it, and all that stuff. And so it was like, here's like real food from beans that she took off the tree in her backyard. And so it was kind of neat to see.
That is very cool. In fact, I'm thinking about that video you're talking about with that the dandelion. If you have it, or if you know where you can find it, if you can send me an email, I'd love to look at that myself. And I was thinking our Facebook page. I'll give us a little plug for that. Our Facebook, if you go to Facebook Camping Survival or Facebook Camping Survival Women, we've got almost 150,000 fans, and they're very active. We post all kinds of cool stuff. I'd like to post that dandelion video on our Facebook page. I'd like to see it too myself.
Yeah, I'll find it, and I'll even put it in the show notes here, because it is very cool. I mean, it's well done. It's not like a camera looking down on some grass or whatever. It's like the top 2 inches of a stalk, and with blue sky in the back. And I don't know how they filmed this, but it was really cool. So yeah, I'll look that up and
you know what? To give folks an extra incentive to study medicinal plants, this just popped into my head. You can dry and grind up the roots of dandelion and make yourself a coffee substitute. It doesn't have the caffeine in it, but if you're jonesing for some coffee, in a post-disaster situation, you're not going to get your caffeine fixed. But maybe that's one way you can at least get closer to normalcy. So little things like that are good to know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us out there would need the coffee fix, although the caffeine won't be there. We'd have to find the caffeine plant or something.
Yeah. I imagine you have new preppers or people new to survival and preparedness. What's a good way to start or a good way to get information? The one way I think is by reading books like 1 Second After. I'll even recommend Lights Out from, I believe his name is Halfast, was his Halfast.
Yeah, I think his name is David Crawford.
That's right, it is. Bingo.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite EMP books. I mean, 1 Second After is a good historical, or I should say a good fictional account based on real facts of EMP and stuff. And William Forstchen did a great job of transcribing that. Although, speaking of dandelion, I was going to say I don't remember them like pulling up dandelions or anything to eat, or any of those other common plants that would probably be taking over the lawns. So I don't know if it doesn't grow there. Yeah, I don't remember them doing that. Of course,
did actually. It just popped into my head. Sorry to cut you out. It was kind of exciting. I just remember a scene in the book where they have the college there, and they actually got the quote hippies that were kind of tossed aside normally as outside society. They got these hippie types together, and those are the ones that actually knew edible and medicinal plants. So they were helping to some level. I just don't think the guy who wrote the book understood the level that edible and medicinal plants could have helped them, so they didn't utilize them.
I remember that, and I just don't. I don't remember, and maybe they did. I just remember, but again, if you don't tend your grass, your lawn, and you don't spray for weeds and stuff, I have a lot of. Even here in the desert, we have a lot of weeds that pop up, and we do get even dandelions here. And it's always been in the back of my mind that if there was ever a food crisis where food was getting scarce, when the dandelions go to seed, I would take those seeds and I would basically pound them into the ground so they would grow more the next time, because again those are edible. But we're talking about Lights Out. I think Lights Out is a good book. I don't know if it's completely based on 100% fact, but I thought it was a really good look at what would happen or what could happen with these communities, and how some people just turn to I don't want to say evil, but you do have those type of people that take advantage of the situation, and people have to defend themselves and stuff. And I don't know if you know, but they're trying to make that into a movie. I think they've got a Kickstarter project. They're trying to. I think they've already started filming. They're trying to either do post-production or something. So I'm going to find out more about that at this Prepper Expo that I'm going to this weekend. They're going to have, I think it's a sneak preview or something like that about the movie. So I'm kind of excited about it.
Heck yeah. Boy, I love. Where's the Prepper Expo?
It's in Bakersfield, California. It's the Prepare to Endure Expo.
Oh, okay. Boy, I'd love to go there. I won't be able to make it, but man, I bet that's fun. And I'd love to see any kind of a preview of a movie on Lights Out. That'd be terrific. I love going to shows, but I seldom set up a booth for our company. In fact, I don't think I've ever set up a booth for Camping Survival. My tool company, I've got a tool company. I've done that over the years a bit, but I like to go to shows and walk around and see things. I don't think I'd want to be stuck in a booth, and I love meeting people and hanging out and talking about all our stuff, but I'd rather go experience other stuff,
Well, that's why you bring employees and you have them stay behind the booth.
Good idea. Maybe I'll do that.
Well, Tom, I want to thank you for taking time today to come on and talk about edible plants and how people can get involved and where they can go start getting involved in learning about edible and medicinal plants. Anything else you'd like to leave before we close out the podcast?
No, I think that was great. I had fun. I enjoyed it. I love this kind of thing, and I'm hoping, who knows, maybe something we said here will help someone else or just motivate someone else, and maybe even get someone new started into it. Who knows? I appreciate the time.
And just as a side note, I did find the dandelion video, and I will post it in the show notes. If you decide to go to Campus Survival and check it out, remember, you can get a 5% discount for using the coupon code PrepCast. Until next time, enjoy life and be safe.